Welcome to the One Hand at a Time podcast. I'm your host, Chris Welton. And if you've been listening lately, I've been kind of going down the path of nutrition and fitness. And I have a guest on today that I connected with in Las Vegas, of all places. And then now we're going to talk about fitness and nutrition because there's not a lot of that out there, except we were working out every morning that we were in Vegas because we were in the same room together. But it's an amazing story. He dropped a book today. So we're recording this on December 5th. And I cannot wait to unpack this. So welcome to the call, Coach Keg, Justin Kegley.
Thanks so much, Chris. I appreciate you having me on. I love your stuff. It was great meeting you in person and being a part of, Ben's group, The Uncommon Live. And so this is a pleasure for me, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. It's my pleasure. So, today's the day. Like, did you have any, the book drops? And I've got my book dropping here in about 6 weeks. And what did that feel like this morning when you got up? You've been tracking the sales all day, or how's that work?
Yeah, I've been tracking it, but also trying to live in the space of, we put in the work building up to this and have a tremendous team of people that have been so supportive and given such great feedback. Really just enjoying the messages that are going out and the sharing. And so, I'm tracking it obviously because I'm a numbers guy, but also, Amazon batches that. So there's only so much that you can do without driving yourself crazy. So really just trying to celebrate what's happening, the people that are sharing, and just putting that message out there, because it's about the impact that we're trying to make. And when that continues to happen, it really hits me, and I'm just super grateful and appreciative for everybody there.
Yeah, once we get once my listeners and the people watching on YouTube will get a chance to connect with you over social and see what you're all about, they'll really be able to appreciate what we're going to unpack here today. And
sure.
There's so many people in the space these days that are talking about nutrition and fitness, and just there's so many different messages coming from so many different places. What makes you an expert to be able to put that book out there for this space of high school athletes?
Well, I've worked with high school athletes for 15 years, high school, college, middle school athletes for the last 15 years. And so we have a facility in Rockford, Illinois. Movement Fitness is our space. It's a 5,500 square foot facility that specializes in sport performance and personal training. And we've had kids that have gone on to play. If you could see my facility, I love it because there's flags hanging all over the rafters of the facility. But we've helped so many kids go on, working at schools like Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, obviously a lot of Midwest concentration here, but we've helped so many kids progress on. And what I know about parents is when they bring kids in now, like they know, hey, I need to get faster, my kid needs to get stronger, and they need to be better and maximize performance. But the second thing that they always say is like, hey, can you either help Johnny or Susie learn about nutrition, or can you reinforce what I'm trying to tell them and they're not listening to me? And ultimately, I have a passion for nutrition for two reasons. Number one, I was an athlete. I played college football. And two, 17 years ago, I weighed 300 pounds, right? So I found myself, after I was done playing sports, I was 300 pounds. I was super unhealthy, unhappy with who I was. It not only impacted my physical being, but who I was mentally and my confidence. And this is before I had gotten back. I was a personal trainer at one point, got into corporate America because I needed the real job. And, which is funny, but I needed to make a change in my own life. And so I started this journey for myself, and then looking at what I needed as an athlete and what I need, as a human, as an adult, those things kind of line up. So I wanted to find a space to go like, look, how can I help people to not only help them maximize their performance now, but to build habits that ultimately will take them into life that will allow them to be successful in whatever they end up in.
Well, let's unpack the 300 pounds first, because I could tell you guys, I was in a room with Justin, and what was there, probably like 30 people maybe every morning with us working out in Vegas. And Justin was probably one of the most fit people in the room. And that's not, the bar was super high. Like, that's not like, oh, well, he was a fit, like you go to Thanksgiving, like I'm the most fit person at the Thanksgiving table. Well, that doesn't necessarily say much sometimes, but like we had some stud athletes in the room, right? Like, I mean, some guys that are just operating on a different level. How do we go from 300 pounds to like where you are right now?
Yeah, thanks. Well, so here's the deal. I got on the scale at Christmas. So Christmas time always hits me hard because I got on the scale at my in-laws house and it was these bright red numbers that said 296 on it. And to be honest with you, I had gained or lost a number of pounds over the previous couple years. But once I quit playing sports, I went into powerlifting and bodybuilding, and that helped me for a while. And then it was like, let's put on some weight to put on some muscle. And what you need to know is when you're a natural guy, you can't put it on the way other bodybuilders do that have help. And so I kind of, the weight stuck with me. And then, I went into the corporate job. I went and worked for a couple different places in corporate America. And then my wife got pregnant. We had our first son, and it was kind of like, all right, life is just work a job. Well, when I got on the scale at Christmas that year, it hit me. I was like, look, my son is not going to know a person that comes home and that gives him energy and that teaches him how to play baseball and teaches him how to play basketball and is active. I'm going to be the dad that's going to come home and literally sit in a recliner, and I'm not going to be happy with that. That's not okay with me. And that moment hit me so hard. And, I went from, hey, I need to lose 50 pounds to go like, look, I got to change some habits in my life. And we talk about this, Ben talks about it all the time, setting up your habits and routines for success. But I said, look, what if I just didn't weigh 290 pounds? What if I got to 289? Like, that's goal number one. And, you could make that change. And so 2 weeks, I lose 6 pounds and, 6.1 pounds, right? And I feel great. And it's like, all right, I start the ball rolling. And I did that month over month. And so in 6 months, I went from 296 to about 249. And I really was low level physical fitness. I was walking, I was doing some training, but very, very low level. Like I just started back off. And so then I got the itch, and then I got back into bodybuilding. And so at one point I had actually lost 103 pounds by the time I stepped on stage. Stuff there. Right?
Some David Goggins weight loss.
Yeah. So I went from 296 to 193 for a bodybuilding competition. Now I don't live there now because that's pretty lean for me, but that was the case. So that was over a year or so of time, and it changed everything for me. And so I've maintained 70 pounds down for the last about 17 years, and really it came out of beginning with those small changes. We live in America, we're coming up on New Year's, and everybody thinks, okay, I'm going to change everything New Year's. I'm going to change everything next Monday. I'm going to change everything next month, whatever it is. And in reality, it was a matter of going, no, you know what? The most powerful change happens when I start right now.
Yes.
And just make the little thing, right? Just let me not eat this thing. Let me not eat the fast food that I was going to eat today. That's a win. Get a win today. And then it just started progressing. And so it was really about the habits that I built going, I don't know what to do. So I just started doing one thing at a time.
Yeah. I talked about this the other day to a group of people, and we talked about, I call it the season of coasting. From Thanksgiving to the end of the year, everybody starts coasting because I'm going to be so much better in January. But what they don't realize is, yeah, they may be better when they start January 1, but it's going to be till March till they get back to where they were the day they started coasting. Like it just doesn't make sense. So why not start right now? I always start my goals for the next year in November. That's just what I've done. Mm-hmm. I feel like it gives me a head start on my competition, and I just go after it, right? And I think that's a big deal for that. So Absolutely. we have the facility in Rockford, right? Which I've been to Rockford before. I did some consulting business in Rockford for a little while. We can talk about that when we get off the air. It's a different part of America there. Love that it's close enough to go to Chicago to a Cubs games. I lived in Indiana for a long time, so I was able to get up there and visit the Windy City. But so let's stay on the track of nutrition with kids, because sure. There's a saying, you can't be a prophet in your own town, which essentially your kids aren't going to listen to what you have to say, regardless of what you've been through. They'll listen to somebody else tell you that if you say the same exact thing. When it comes to nutrition with high school athletes right now, what do you think the biggest challenge is for them to stay focused or understand the importance of what they put in their body counts?
Well, the first thing that I wrote in the book, so High Performance Nutrition for High School Athletes, the first thing I wrote was you have to understand your why and your purpose, right? You have to understand why you're doing this. Because anytime you're doing something, you have to be, whatever you want to call it, motivated. You have to have your standards. Ben talks about that. But whatever it is, you have to have a reason for doing it. And the problem is I think not only for kids, but for adults as well, we get motivated. We're like, hey, I want to gain weight. I want to get faster. I want to get stronger. So athletes have this mindset and they're like, I want to do these things. But what they don't do is they don't correlate their actions outside of the gym or outside of the field or the court to what they're doing on it. So they're like, I'm going to go work super hard. Or you have the worst scenario where you're like, hey, I'm going to show up on Friday night, and when the lights go on, that's when I shine. You're like, that's not how this works, man. So when I look at our athletes, they're having a tough time putting A and B together. Look, I had an athlete a couple weeks ago. Mom and dad brought him to me and said, look, he's sore all the time. Is he doing too much? And I looked at his calendar. I'm like, yeah, he's doing a lot, but this isn't more than any of our other athletes are doing. So let's do this. Let's make an adjustment. And really the first thing we did was start feeding him more protein. And 2 weeks, literally, he's like, it's like nothing ever happened. It's like I'm never sore again. Like I'm living at a different level and I'm able to perform and play in a way that I didn't know that I could before. And it all came back to going like, dude, you're under feeding yourself, which ultimately means you can't push yourself to the edge, which means you're never going to reach maximum capacity, which you're never going to achieve your goals. So it's getting the kids first off to understand that in order to get to where you want to go, you have to have that mindset of where you're going to be locked in most of the time. I don't expect perfection, but you need to be able to understand these things all correlate. Your sleep, your nutrition, how you train, all of that goes together into putting the athlete on the field or court that you want to be.
Look, I'm 51 years old. So when I was playing, the meals we would have before the games, I'm embarrassed to even tell people what it is now. Like literally, like we would pregame meal was on Friday nights. They'd bring a truckload of pizzas in, or like subs, or like that's just what we ate. And I think I'm like, oh my god, like no wonder we got beat so much, right? I mean, like, it's just like we weren't eating, we weren't feeding ourselves. But I think it's so important that people to understand you have to eat where you want to go. Like, and my trainer works with me a lot on this. Is like, if I want to be at 225 lean, I need to eat to get to 225 lean, not eat where I'm at. But I really find it I can't wait to read the book, first of all. I can't wait to jump in and read it. And making that connection with your workout and your food is a game changer. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, I count my macros, I do everything I'm supposed to do. Yeah, my wife, we're having a baby next week, so my diet hasn't been the best. I got to be honest.
That's awesome, man.
A little
Congratulations.
Bit off. Well, thank you. But it's, but I know what I'm supposed to be doing because I have there's so much information out there now. I can't wait to see what this book does and the impact on the kids that read it, that take the advice, right?
Yeah. Well, this book was written, number one, basically as a putting together all of these things that I've told my clients over the years. All right. So it didn't just come out like, hey, I should write a book. It was like, no, I had 4 manuscripts written out, and they weren't even manuscripts. They were just going to be like, hey, let me give you a PDF. Let me do, just let me not have to answer this question 100 times over the next month. Okay. So that was the first goal of this. But in 2 things, it was written as a guide for parents and also coaches, but also athletes. And I write it to both because here's the deal. We get a lot of parents that'll come in and say, help my son or daughter learn how to eat better. Help them do this, help them do that. And you're like, okay, great. But if we're really talking, let me step back and go, guess what? They're not buying the groceries. They're not the ones that are making the meals most of the time. And they're not the ones that are making the decision to go through the drive-thru because it's more convenient on a Tuesday night when you have practice or a game or whatever the case may be. I get it. I'm the parent of 2 teenagers. I have multiple kids in travel sports. I have 3 boys total. Like, we are in it. I understand. It is easier to do those things. But you can't expect that someone's going to say like, hey, I talked to your kid one time, or hey, I read this book, and then all of a sudden, boom, my kid gets it. Right? The parent is the one that's going to have the most influence over the kid and their choices nutritionally. So it's not just on someone else. Now, before parents feel too beat up about this, the flip side is at some point, if you're an athlete and you want to push it to the next level and you want to achieve your maximum potential, it's on you to start taking responsibility for the things that go into your mouth. Are you waking up on time to eat breakfast in the morning? Okay. Are you taking or packing your lunch when you go to school? Are you having something before practice? All of those things, mom or dad can't do that for you. They can make the stuff, they can have the food for you, but they can't make that choice. So at some point, it's on both of them. And it's a matter of going like, let's create a resource that allows parents to go, look, I always love it because you have it like when I have another coach that coaches my kids, I get to say, hey, do you remember when Coach so-and-so said this? Let's do that, right? Like I get to take my hands off and not be the bad guy, right? And like push in and be like, hey, they said this. So it's no longer about me being the expert. It's about using the resource to go like, hey, this is what they said. So let's do that. What are we missing? How can we help you with that? Meantime, the kid has to be able to say, look, I want to be here. So I need to do all these things that are going to stair step me up to that point.
I love the fact that kids are going to have a roadmap now, not just with the workouts, but nutrition, and understand, like when you look at these big programs, like you look at Alabama football, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, somebody who dominates all the time, and I know I have a Gators helmet in the back. Maybe they need some nutrition help because they can't
go Gators, man.
Yeah, they can't. Yeah, go Gators. But man, it's just been tough. But imagine if you're a kid and you want to be at that level. Those guys are dialed in with nutrition, right? They just are. I mean, yeah, look, we all have that one friend that's a genetic freak that eats 3 Big Macs and he's 9% body fat. I can't help that his body doesn't recognize carbohydrates like mine does. But
sure.
When you look at the fuel you put in, the results you get, it's like doing a math problem, right? Like, let's make sure we understand the fuel we put in. But let's go back to the parent piece. Mm-hmm. Obesity is a generational issue, right? And I'm not knocking on anybody that struggles with obesity, okay? I struggle with it myself. That's why I continue to stay working out, stay in shape, because if not, I will be 300 pounds very easily.
Absolutely.
But when you look at a family, you'll see almost everybody is obese, right? And you'll see people like, I was at the gym the other day and I've seen some people in there that I've seen working out in there for a couple of years. They haven't changed at all. And they're putting it in. But what does that tell you? It tells you that the nutrition isn't where it needs to be to get where you want to go, right?
Yep.
So,
well, here's what I know. Like, it's just great point. So we talked about let's achieve maximum performance from an athlete perspective, but let's also talk about longevity. One of the books that I know you and I have read is Forever Strong by Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. We saw her in Las Vegas at the boot camp, and she's fantastic, right? And one of the things that she talks so much about is that muscle is the organ of longevity, and I believe that. How do you get muscle? You pair protein with resistance training, right? So when you put those two things together, it makes a massive difference in your life. Well, one of the things that I talk about in the book that is key for the athlete to understand to maximize their performance is we use a protein first strategy. Protein first in your planning of your meals, protein first thing in the morning, and protein first thing after your workout, training, or game. So yes, there are other times they should have protein. Yes, we have numbers that we want to hit and we kind of give guidelines for that. But I know if ultimately some kid hit 25 to 30 grams of protein at minimum at those 3 junctions of the day, in their meal, between lunch and all that, and they have their protein first strategy, we know that they're going to have way more success than if they didn't. So the problem is protein first in their meal planning, like they don't think, oh, hey, I'm going to have chicken and rice and whatever. Well, this is me telling them, this is us having a conversation about like, oh, well, we need to change the way we think about building a meal. Okay. Protein first thing in the morning. What's the traditional breakfast in America? It's a lot of cereal,
a lot of sugar,
a lot of crap,
dyes,
all of that. Yeah. Right. So let's step it back and go, look, let's have some eggs, eggs and some toast and whatever, however that looks. Or let's have some overnight oats, prepare that stuff in advance, So trying to give them the idea of like, how do we build this? Because ultimately it's going to allow us to repair and recover as an athlete from our training, practice, or game the night before. It's going to allow us to fuel and prepare because our body doesn't store protein like it does carbs or fat. So we need to be able to make sure that we have protein going through our system continually. And it gives them that information. So ultimately, they can prepare themselves and build more lean muscle tissue and recover faster to be able to be better. Longitudinally, we know that if they take a protein first strategy and pair that along with what Dr. Lyon teaches, we know that for life, they're going to not only be leaner and better off, but it's going to help them mentally. It's going to reduce long-term chronic diseases, diabetes and things like that. To go like, that's going to make a major impact. This is how we start to make the generational change, rather than just saying, well, I hope they eat well as a kid, and then when they get older, they're on their own.
Now, think about, as a parent, if I'm a parent listening to this right now, think about the advantages your kid will have if we can get their diet dialed in at a young age, right? I mean, like I said, my son's going to be born next week, and, we're probably going to go to the gym the week after, right? Like, we're going to be right. We're going to be on, as soon as he can digest normal food, we're going to really focus on that. Eating right and just getting on the right direction. I mean, there are too many opportunities to eat Pop-Tarts for breakfast or cereal or whatever that is. Make some eggs, right? Make some, even bacon, salt, whatever, just some protein to have for breakfast. But when you're packing their lunch, I'm not saying don't give them a little Debbie, but don't give them all the other stuff, right? Like, kids are going to eat some treats. They just are. They're not going to be like me.
Sure.
I mean, or how I should be, I should say. But like, there's so many different things we can do to make sure we keep the kids on track and start them at an early age, create the habits now, and then you're just setting them up for success later in life.
Absolutely. Well, you think of what you've said and like how I should be. And the hard part is we think like, here's the ideal, like I should hit that all the time. And you go, yeah, that should be the case most of the time. And I'm not really like an 80% guy. I think we should be better than that in terms of where we're at. But look, if you eat pizza, but most of your life, you eat pizza on a Friday night. I go home and I'm like pizza and this with my kids. And, but the rest of my life, I'm eating pretty well. I don't have to worry about what's my ideal because I'm already there most of the time. And that one night of pizza or that, pasta or whatever the thing is, doesn't become a big deal because I know after that, I'm getting back on the train. Mm-hmm. Or when I go on vacation and you're like, you know what, I had some drinks and I had, tacos and guacamole and chips because I'm in Mexico or whatever, right? Like, you're like, okay, when you get back on, because you have a standard, like it's not that big of deal, but we go through these massive fluctuations like, well, hey, I already screwed up, so I might as well just go all in on it, and then I'll reset on Monday. And then you're like, what you said earlier, you spend so much time trying to get back to where you were rather than trying to get better. You're just trying to get back to even. So I think that's a huge part of just teaching kids to go, look, I don't expect you to be perfect, okay? But what I do expect is I do expect you to eat protein because it's good for you, not only in the short term, but in the long term. You should eat some vegetables and fruit. We need to take care of that stuff because we need the micronutrients in our system too. But you don't have to eat perfectly. And I think that's the message. And one of the other things is what I'm really excited about is I talk about this, but I also give people specific, I think in each category, we give like 8 to 10 meals. Like here's the meal. Just like do it and plan it so you can have it rather than talking hypothetical like, oh, have some eggs and have this. It's like, no, here's the breakfast that you should have. Like, here's 10 of them. You know what? Pick one. You got to find something, And then if you want more, you can go search that on the internet. There's millions, but, that's the deal.
I'm challenging anybody that's listening. Let's get the book, but also put it in place. Like, commit to doing it for 60 or even 90 days. Like, we're getting ready for baseball season to start in Florida. Like it's, as soon as Christmas is over, not where you're at. You guys don't start baseball till probably like May.
We got a bit.
So cold, but we start baseball in January, right? Like that's when we start here. So if you're local here and you're listening, let's get your kids on a plan right now. And let's see how much better their performance is this season if you stick to some kind of diet, like you stick to some kind of nutritional plan. Like pack some snacks in there. Like I keep a box of these on my desk. It's First Form's protein stick.
Yep.
Like, 20 grams of protein. It's there. I keep it with me. I'm curious what you teach on hydration, Justin. What's hydration look like with kids?
Well, hydration is the first thing we break down in the book from a nutritional perspective, because hydration impacts every cell in our body. And if you're not hydrated, you're ultimately going to lose. All right. So we have multiple different strategies that we take people through. And I have a couple graphics that we specifically talk about this. Even a 1% decrease in hydration is going to start to cause like brain fog, and you're going to be, a little more fatigued. You're going to be off your game. So we want to make sure that kids have hydration that starts off in the morning, starts first thing in the morning, 10 to 12 ounces at least. All of this, let me back up. All of this started, the whole book thing started because last year we started asking some simple questions of our athletes, and it's the first part of the book. And we said hey, did you have 10 ounces of water in the morning if you came in to train at 9 o'clock? And the number of kids that are like, no, I just rolled out of bed and I'm literally here. And you're like, what do you?
No, I had chocolate milk. Coach.
Go drink some water, bro. We literally would make them go to the water fountain and drink water before they came over.
Yeah.
So that was part of the strategy. Also, looking at this and going if you're going to do this, I think most athletes should drink at least 100 ounces of water a day, right? So if we're playing and or having practice or training, it's about 100 ounces. What's cool about what's happening today is, most people have one of these or a Hydro Flask or whatever it is. And so you go all right, it's 32 ounces or it's 40 ounces or 24 ounces. You go, great. Know how many those are and how many do you need to drink a day? Right. And so around sports and games, you should have a little bit more. The beginning stage we teach is half your body weight in ounces plus 15. That'll get most people where they are, especially younger kids, drinking 100 ounces of water. If you're younger, maybe a little much. But again, towards high school athletes, that should be a bare minimum. And then we also teach in the book, hydration. How do you know if you're dehydrated or not? One of the things we teach, that we have in here is looking at just going to the bathroom. What color is your urine? You look at that and you go hey, am I drinking enough? Literally have a chart in here that shows oh, this is where it looks like, so that way we can understand. So hydration is super important. And most of it obviously should come from water. I know that today there are a lot of sports drinks and electrolyte drinks out there, and I think some of them are good and some of them can play a part in where we're at and from a game strategy. But we have a lot of people that are just drinking sports drinks throughout the course of the day for no reason, right? And you're adding added calories, you're adding in dyes into your day that are not necessary when, regular water will do just fine. Now, if you want to add that in during a game, those are times that things make sense. Pre and post game. So you can do that as well. We also have strategies in terms of what we lay out in the book as far as how much water you should drink before a game or practice, during a game, and then, after the game as well.
I think it's hard. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's so easy to grab a sports drink, right? I'm going to go grab a Gatorade or whatever that is. And I love Element. I use Element all the time. Since I'm done training. I'll put some Element in some water, knock it out. I mean, I don't know. Is that kind of the same effect for a high school kid or a younger kid drinking an Element, or is it be too much sodium in there? What's your take on that?
Well, sodium is not necessarily the problem, depending on your diet, right? We have some people that don't need to add more sodium into their diet, and we have other people. If you eat super clean, sodium is actually, we will need that more in our diet. I love Element in a couple specific places. Number one, I love it first thing in the morning because it actually will allow you to take in and absorb more water because of the sodium level and keep it into your cells. Pre-workout is also great because it increases blood volume. You can use it post-workout as well from a recovery perspective. And then pre or post game. The problem is around games for athletes, it can be a lot because of how salty it is, and it'll make them even more thirsty. So that can be a little bit of a challenge. But the old adage, if you get, we want to keep people from getting cramps. The old adage was eat a banana. Well, banana's full of potassium. We actually need sodium to draw water into our cells. So that is a place that can be good to use Element there. So I'm a big fan. I use it. I drink it pretty much every day.
Yeah.
The only difference is using a sports drink adds in some carbohydrates, which is something that we want to replace glucose over time if we're playing extended games. So you're playing a long soccer match, you're playing hockey or basketball, or you're a marathon runner or distance runner, something like that. That would make sense to have something that has some carbohydrates in to replace some glucose there if you were losing there.
Yeah, I always, if I'm going to drink a sport drink, I'm going to drink the like Gatorade Zero or something along those lines. But what about the fresh fruit side of things? Like, I'm a big, I eat berries every day. Blueberries, strawberries, the lower glycemic index, but they great antioxidants. They're just super powerful for that.
Yep.
What about that? Let's say you have a high school wrestler. There's a lot of those in your area, right? That's any indoor sport, right? So a lot of high school wrestlers, we make weight, we start wrestling, we have to rehydrate because we've probably been cutting for a couple of days. What about as far as nutrition during the day in a tournament? Is the blueberry, strawberry, that type of stuff? What would you recommend there?
Yeah, so obviously that's good from a carbohydrate perspective. It's good from a hydration because a lot of that, you look at something like watermelon, which is like mostly water. That can be really great. It depends on what the activity is, right? And what is the duration? Are we doing something? So if you have wrestling, if you're playing like basketball games and you have a tournament where you're like, hey, we're playing 2 to 3 games a day. Starting off the day, you have to look at this. We gave a couple strategies in the book of like how you should eat in tournaments. If you're playing in tournaments, you have a couple things that you need to take into account. Number one, you have kids that don't want to eat in the morning, right? They wake up stomach. If they eat before activity, they feel like they're going to get sick. They feel like they're going to get sick. Obviously, they're not going to play well. So what's the strategy for that? Well, making sure we load up a little more the night before so that way they can eat a smaller breakfast just to manage blood sugar in the morning. Like that's a strategy there, right? I always want to put a little bit of some form of protein in there to make sure that we're just optimal from every time we eat. I basically think we should have some protein in our meal. So then you have that in between games, like or matches or whatever it is. How long do we have, right? If you have a 2 to 3 hour window, we're going to probably eat a meal because we need to eat something. If you have a 15 to 30 minute window, we're probably going to have something smaller as a snack. You could have some fruit. You could have, your first form, jerky, something like that, chopstick, whatever they are, like those kinds of things, just to make sure that you're fueled up enough to replace your glycogen, so that way you can go out and you can perform at your best without feeling like you're going to get sick. So we have to know who our kid is, how they function, without letting them off the hook. And then you realize 20 minutes in the game, you're like, oh well, Johnny's like just dead because he has no food in him, right?
No fuel.
So
yeah.
That's a challenge. And so again, going back to helping them understand, like, look, you have a lot of kids. I have a 17-year-old that will tell me, most mornings, well, I'm not that hungry. Okay. Do you want to get faster? Do you want to jump higher? Yes. Okay. Then we need to eat some breakfast. We need to have some protein. We need to have something that's going to fuel you up for it. Do you want to put on weight? Yes. Do you want to hit the ball farther? Yes. We need to be able to do these things. So we have to find that balance of knowing who our kids are, but also not allowing them to get off the hook.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think it's going to have a massive impact. I'm so glad that the Uncommon Live Nation has been spreading it. I've seen it all over social media today.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. What's the one thing you would love to see happen with this book, Justin?
I would love to get this book literally into the hands of every high school athlete, because I think it will allow them to achieve their God-given potential. Ultimately, this is about how can you achieve your highest level of capability. And we talk about in our Uncommon Live group with Ben, and we talk about, how are we going to live to a standard over feelings, right? We're going to set our standards and live to that. This is our opportunity for us as parents, as coaches, as people of influence to say, look, if you want to achieve more, there is more expected. You have to live to a higher level. You have to live to a standard that's above everybody else. there are people that don't want to live to this standard, and that's okay. That's okay. It's not your job to make them do that. But if you want more, then there's another level that's expected. And if we can give them that and say, look, here's an opportunity. You can make the most of it. And you go, look, most people know now that training is required for people that want to go on and play at a D1 level, D2 level, high levels of sport, right? Like that, we know that. It's really no longer a competitive advantage. Maybe the style of training that you do, but the competitive advantage is going like, do you sleep and do you eat, right? Because everybody's on their phones. They want to stay up late. It's easy to go, well, I'm going to skip this meal. It's not that big of a deal, Dad. And you go, yeah, but you've done it 4 days this week. That is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So I want to put this in their hands to go, there is a standard for excellence. And, Andy Frisella talks about excellence is the ultimate, the personal rebellion, the ultimate rebellion. And I want to have people in the next generation to go, you know what? I'm not going to settle for average. And this is one way to go, look, we talk about, building your purpose, living to standard over feelings, taking that message from Ben, and then giving them specific things for them to do that will ultimately allow them to not only stand out from the crowd, but to stand out from themselves and to reach their full potential. And that's all I ever want, is for someone to give their best. And if they do that, we have a chance to change the next generation, to allow them to see what greatness looks like. And then they can take that forward. And then hopefully we can continue that and ultimately raise the standard of who we are as a nation and beyond.
I love that. And here's the thing. It's not just about the athletics that the kids are playing in today. When you're my age or my much younger padre on my brother on the call here, Justin, when you walk into a boardroom or you walk into a place and you're fit, people recognize it, right? And you get more respect when you walk in and you can tell you take care of yourself. If you're in sales or whatever that is, people show you more respect because they see that you're a disciplined individual. And also your brain operates at a higher level. You have higher self-confidence. You're more likely to achieve things. Show me somebody that's super successful in life and they don't take care of themselves. I don't see it. And if they haven't taken care of themselves, they're not going to stay in that spot for very long. So, Justin, I appreciate you hopping on here today, man. And I'm so glad that we connected. I can't wait to see, what our relationship grows to in the future, man. I'm going to make sure in the show notes that everybody has access, a link to get to the book. But what's the best way for people to reach out to you if they maybe want to set up a Zoom with you to talk to their team or anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm pretty active on social media. So at Coach Keg on Instagram, on Twitter. So that's probably the easiest way to reach out to me there. I can also leave my email in the show notes as well.
Yep,
so
I'll have it all put in there for you, Justin.
Yeah, so we can do that as well. But that's the easiest really way to get a hold of me there.
All right, guys, everybody buy that book. Let's go. He's having a good day, the first day today. I bought 10 copies, so buy more. Buy more.
Dude, I gotta tell you, Chris, I am so grateful for this opportunity to speak. I'm grateful for you, buying the books. When you hear someone say like, hey, I'm going to support you and I'm going to buy this and I believe in it. And you're like, man, that's awesome. But when you put rubber to the road and you're like, we did it. It means a lot to me. And I'm just super grateful for you. I'm grateful for the Uncommon Live family and Ben and everybody. And I appreciate you more than I could probably express right now. So thanks, man.
Oh, dude, my pleasure. Trust me, my pleasure. Thank you for tuning into the One Hand at a Time podcast. Please make sure you like and share the episode. And we'll see you next time here at the One Hand at a Time podcast. Make it a great day.